In today's video, we're going to perfect your burl. Stay tuned. Well, hello everybody, I'm Willis Bagpiper, and on this channel I make videos to make you a stronger and more confident piper. If you like this kind of content, please think about subscribing to the channel, liking the video, commenting below with any thoughts you might have, and sharing with any other pipers in your life. If you want more personalized instruction, I also give Skype lessons, but more on that later. The burl, the bane of many pipers' existence. It's a very difficult embellishment to get under control, quick, and lively. It's a wonderful embellishment. It's one of the signature sounds of the pipes, but it is rather tricky to get up and going. In the description below, there's a link to the PDF download I have right here, so go ahead, print that out, put it on a tablet, have it in front of you so you can follow along. In a previous video, which will be linked somewhere up here, I talked about my particular burl, which is a little crazy. It's I tend to sweep up and then down. I injured myself over burling many years ago doing a tap curl style burl, and now that pulling back motion doesn't really work for me, but that doesn't really matter for today's exercise. We're going to talk about a few different ways to approach it. So this is for every type of burl out there. So the burl is all about 3 low A's. It's really easy to think about the burl being about the low G because the low G is the finger. That pinky is the finger we're using to create the sound of the burl, but it's really not about those low G's. Those low G's are there to separate the low A's. One of the first warm-ups I want to do with you guys, there's not really a way I can write this down, but it involves actually just tapping the pinky rather than any sweeping or curling motions. I want to actually tap the hole, tap below the hole, tap the hole, tap above the hole, tap the hole, tap below the hole, tap the hole, tap above the hole. You can try blowing through the channel when you do this. It's really not necessary. You can actually even just look at your finger. But part of the idea is that you want to start figuring out exactly where that hole is. And you can pick up your pipe channer too and do that on your pipe channer because that's where it's really going to matter. But figuring out exactly where that hole is can be very helpful before we start sweeping everything else. So tap on the hole, tap below the hole, tap on the hole, tap above the hole. Boom. And do that for a little bit. Kind of figure out exactly where that hole is placed on your instrument. We need to get our pinky warmed up and ready, very agile, very dexterous. Now, in my style of burl, I sweep up and then I sweep down. And in this exercise, I specifically discuss that because that is the burl I tend to teach my students. That being said, we're going to be breaking the motion down into its upward sweep and then its downward sweep. Or maybe for you, the first part of your motion and then the second part of your motion. So if you're a 7 style burler where you kind of sweep down and then curl back, on line 1 of this exercise, you might want to do a G grace note A and then just sweep down, sweep down, sweep down, G grace note, sweep down, sweep down. And then on line 2, where I'm actually sweeping down at that motion, for you, if you do a 7 style burl, you could do a G grace note and then kind of curl back, curl back, curl back, G grace note, curl back, curl back, curl back, breaking your burl motion down into its core components so that you have both of them under control, very dexterous and ready to go. That being said, even if you do a 7 style burl or a tap curl burl or even just a quick double tap burl, which to be honest, I've never seen anyone pull one of those off successfully. So if you can, I'd love to see a video of it. But that being said, even if you do another style of burl, I think there's something to be said about actually just practicing the sweeping motions that I do for my regular burl. It's going to start building up a lot of muscle in your hand for the burl itself. And anything we can do to add dexterity and control to this finger is going to improve your burls. So the first 3 lines of this exercise are all about just warming up your finger and getting it ready. So in line 1, it's the first part of your burl motion. So for me, that's going to be a G grace note, and then I'm going to sweep up across the hole. So I start, can I get the hole in the video? It's right there. I'm going to sweep up across the hole. So I'm going to do G grace note up across the hole, up across the hole, up across the hole. And we're going to do that 4 to 8 times. I have repeats written on each one of these lines just to imply that you can do it as much as you want. I'm probably only going to do each line 1 time just to keep the video from being 20 minutes. Then in line 2, we're going to go ahead and do a G grace note to start, and then we're going to do the second part of your burl motion. In mine, that's now going to be a downward sweep. So grace note, downward, 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 grace note. And we're going to do that for 4 to 8 bars again. Then finally, for line 3, we're going to start building it into something that sounds an awful lot more like a burl, where you're going to do a G grace note into the first low A. You're going to do the first part of your motion, which again for me is an upward sweep, and then the second part of your motion, which is for me a downward sweep. You're going to do that twice at a slow tempo, twice at a quicker tempo, and then 1 more time at a slow tempo. My metronome here, which is not quite on camera, there it is. This is Tempo by Frozen Ape. It's free, but they do have other paid options, but whatever metronome you have is going to work great. They're all fine. Just something that you can get a nice steady beat. I'm going to be at 80 beats per minute for this part of the exercise, but you pick the tempo that's going to work for you in your world. You want this clean and controlled, not fast and messy. Now onto line 2. Again, trying to make each either grace note or sweeping motion or pulling back motion or whatever your motion is, make sure each one is landing smartly on the click of that metronome. Line 3. We're going to now work through the scale with Birls, and the first one we're going to do is actually the G Gracenote Birl. You can look in bar 3 right there, and you can see that nightmare of an embellishment if you haven't seen it before. I promise you, it's not nearly as scary as it looks. You're coming from an A, you're going to do a G Gracenote to an A, a sweep up, a sweep down, or a sweep down and a curl back, or a tap and then a curl, or a downward sweep and a curl back. Whatever your style of Birl is, that's what you're going to do. It looks worse than it is. We're starting with this one rather than the more traditional Birl, which we'll get into in the next line, because I want to really hear the 3 A's that make up a Birl. We're going to be on an A, and then on the next beat, we're going to start 1, 2, 3. We're going to hear all 3 of the A's that make up the Birl, and the G Gracenote really helps, make that clear and audible, the timing we're looking for in a good Birl. Now I have the Birls written out at full speed. Those were relatively quick. Do the Birl that you can as quickly but cleanly as possible. So you want 2 that are right on the down and then the up of the beat as shown in bars 1, 2, and 4. And then for the Birl ones, do the quickest Birl you can that's still controlled and has a nice da-da-da kind of sound and not da-da-da or some sort of staggered sound. Now for the next Birl, this is the more typical A to A Birl that does not have that G grace note. If we look in bar 3, and I have a little instruction even on here to watch this video, and this is the part I'm talking about, you'll see I have it written kind of oddly the first time, and then I have it written much more normally the second time. Well, I think the thought was that because you're on an A and the first note of a Birl is an A, that it's kind of redundant to write that A out again. However, I have to kind of disagree slightly. The Birl, the sweeps of the Birl kind of occur at the same point in the beat, whether you're coming from an A to a Birl or from any other note to a Birl, or if you're even sticking a G grace note before the Birl. So it means that that Birl is actually just past the beat. A lot of pipers talk about like kind of pushing that beat before the Birl, and they'll still kind of land that first note on that first sweep on a foot, but you'll often see a bigger foot motion. I like to try to keep the beat a little bit more steady and think about that beat happening and then the Birl happens right after. In fact, I give my band the instruction beat Birl, so you can hear the beat and then immediately you're hitting that Birl. It's not a lot after the beat, it's just after the beat. But if you look at that first example there, you can see that the Birl is going to be written the same way from A to A, and there's just a little tie to show that that A is actually held just past the beat into those sweeps. Now you can see the second one, this is how it's going to look in the wild, and it really implies that that first sweep is right on the beat, and just in my experience and in listening to a lot of great pipers over the years, their Birl is not quite just on the beat, it's always just a little after. They're pushing that note beforehand, and it helps make that Birl land just after the beat. It gives that note beforehand some agogic stress, some extra oomph, and really can make that Birl sound great and really pop. But to think about it mathematically, it is actually just past the beat in the music I've listened to. So let's try that line. From here, we're going to work the rest of the notes of the scale. We're going to start on low G. We're going to skip low A because we just did A in two different varieties here. So we're going to do low G, B, C, D, E, F, high G, and high A. Now, from low G to F, all of these are possible with a G grace note in front of the Birl as well, as kind of shown on the G Gracenote Birl line here. Now, I didn't want this to be a 4-page exercise or a 30-minute video, so I didn't write those in, but as an exercise, you are welcome to throw that in and practice your G Gracenote Birls from all these notes as well. Now, I'm going to say right now, I'm going to do my best. The Birl for me is not my strongest embellishment. If you'd seen the other video that I've posted, again, I actually have some damage to my pinky, and I'm not just trying to make excuses. My Birl is not terribly reliable, so I'm going to do the best in these that I can. I know, and I've worked with these exercises with many of my students, and many of my students have fantastic Birls. So don't let the fact that maybe a few of my Birls might not be quite perfect take away from the fact that this exercise is a great tool for you, and maybe in time it can help me as well, or maybe this just is what it is. But let's see how this goes. Birls from low G. Now, Birl from B. This one can be rather tricky for lots of folks for lots of reasons, because you're coming from a B and you need to go to an A and kind of immediately get those sweeps working. So one of the ways for mine, because I'm sweeping up and across the hole and that's my style, I actually think about bringing my fingers, can we see that hole? There it is. I kind of think about bringing my fingers down together, but the pinky's actually low and below the hole, and then I just sweep back down afterwards. So it's kind of like one motion, and then as soon as it lands, it's sweeping, but because I'm not landing on the hole, I'm still sounding an A to begin with. Now that's going to matter when we get to the fast Birls. On the slower Birls, it gives you a bit of time to start sorting out what you need to do with your pinky to get that nice da-da-da, dead even, ba-ba-ba sound, and not a bump-ba-da. You don't want that first A before the sweeps to be longer than the A between the sweeps. They should all be the same length. So now, Birls from C and D both are particularly tricky, and ones I'm going to admit right now, I don't practice as much as I should. None of my current repertoire has tunes with Birls from these, but the great Bogenlaken, Athelkummer's The Strasbe does indeed have a Birl from C, and that's a very popular tune, so it's definitely one to get up and going, and I need to do better at my due diligence having a good Birl from a C. So that being said, let's see what happens as I give this Birl from C a try. So just be aware if you need to lift your pinky slightly early to get it into whatever position you need to, that's okay. It wasn't all that long ago that it was completely acceptable to play a one-fingered C in any case, so it is going to make a slight difference in your tuning, but these typically are on relatively quick notes, so it probably won't be noticed. And try to keep it down as long as you can, but at the end of the day, you need to get the pinky in the position you need to so that you can, well, Birl with it. Let's see what happens. That wasn't very good. Let's try that again. That was already better. I'm not going to say flawless, but it was better. My job here is to teach you guys how to be better, not just to show off. I know my limitations. Birls from D. I'm not aware of a tune that has a Birl from D. If you are, let me know. I'd love to know what it is, but I don't think I've seen one. The rest of the Birls are relatively straightforward because your bottom hand is already in an A position for E, F, high G, and high A. Do note for high G Birls that it's going to be an A grace note rather than a G grace note just to get to that downbeat note because, well, you can't play a G grace note from a G. You can play an A grace note, though. So let's see how these go. Well, there you go, guys. There are some exercises I think that are going to go a long way to really helping your burl, getting that dexterity built up in the pinky, and getting this otherwise difficult embellishment under control. I know from listening to my own playing here that I got some work to do on C and D in particular, maybe a little bit on B too. My top hand burls I was much happier with. Notice that my bottom hand burls, I was willing to go a little bit slower on the full speed motion to try to get it as clean as I could, and I'm going to keep working on it myself. Well, there you go, guys. If you got something out of this video, please think about giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. And if you want to go the extra mile, you can head over to my Patreon at www.patreon.com/mattpiper, where as little as $1 a month goes a really long way to helping support the channel and keeping me making videos like this. I also give Skype lessons. If you want more personalized instruction, go ahead and head over to www.mattpiper.com or email me at matt@mattpiper. It's shown right there, and we'll get you going. I'm working with students from all over the planet right now, and it's fantastic, and I love that opportunity, so thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this video, so share it with any pipers that you think might get something out of it. All right, guys, I'm Matt Willis Bagpiper, and until next time, cheers.